and welcome back to this week's video interview. I'm Kerry-Ann Hargreaves from H2 Consultancy, and this week I am really pleased to welcome Liz, who is a CIPD qualified HR professional. She focuses on 2 or 3 different areas, which I've got some really interesting snippets to share with you this week. So we're going to focus on leadership, recruitment, human resources, and I'm going to hand over to Liz now to introduce herself. Welcome, Liz.
Thanks, Kerry-Ann. Yeah, I'm Liz Halls and I run Tailored HR, and I'm an independent HR specialist in the Staffordshire area. And I specialise mainly in HR strategy, talent planning, succession planning, and performance management is one of my passions. So I'm keen to speak to manufacturing type businesses, distribution, engineering, because these businesses have got ageing workforces, and having come from that kind of background, I know how difficult it is to recruit specialists in those areas. So yeah, these are all brilliant organisations that I tap into and help them to plan their future. And now that we're coming out of the pandemic, yes, we can start to plan for our future.
I think it's interesting that you said that. I love that positive take there. We're coming out of the pandemic, we can plan for our future, because not many businesses are taking that approach at the moment. So I love that that's what you're focusing on. I think it's really interesting that you're taking such a positive outlook.
Yeah, and what I'm not seeing it in terms of evidence. It's more anecdotally of what I'm seeing when I'm talking to people and people that are employed and working for other employers. I'm seeing a mix. You know, there's some leaders that are bringing people back into the office, and they're reverting straight back to how it was 4 months ago, you know, and it's as if nothing has changed for them. But the companies and the organisations that I'm keen to speak to and, you know, and find out more about are those that have actually switched on to the idea that we don't have to go back to the office per se. You know, we don't have to go back to where we were 4 months ago. You know, we can sit and look at how we do things differently. And there's a couple of people that I know. One lady, she works for a Manchester-based university, and she said the benefit of not having to commute into the office every day means, you know, she's not spending an hour and a half getting the kids to school. She's not stuck in traffic going into the centre of Manchester. How amazing is that? So she's so much more relaxed when she gets to her home desk, you know, to be able to do the work. And she's actually talking to people that she sees fairly infrequently when she's in the office. She's seeing them more now via Zoom than she's ever seen them before. So yeah, doing things differently, and I think that's amazing. I think we need to, you know, reinforce that can happen, should happen, and needs to happen. This is the 21st century. We've got the technology now.
Do you know, I agree with you, and I think, you know, we've got to move with the times, haven't we? And I think the amount of people that have saved on time and travel cost by being based at home, don't get me wrong, I appreciate that not every business can have a full workforce working from home, but I think if you've got city centre offices, you can save on rent. You know, you might be able to work into work share spaces where you don't need to have a committed office space. You can give people a work-life balance back. You know, I think that adds so much value to people's lives that they've perhaps never had before. You know, and it's a real treat. But also, I think the productivity levels that I've been hearing from our clients that have said some are back in, some are staying working from home, and they've increased their productivity levels, you know, and part of that's because people aren't commuting, you know. I just think businesses need to reassess, re-engineer, realign, and move forward. You know, let's be current, let's be real. Hopefully.
Yeah. I think the other way of working, you know, being in an office amongst hundreds of other people, I think a lot of people have had their eyes open. It doesn't need to be that way. I mean, I was lucky 3 years ago to work for a major retailer where I was on a regional role. So I was based in the office, but I went out to store, I went out to other warehouses and that kind of thing. And that really opened my eyes to working differently. I was like, I can take my laptop, you know, my phone, I can do any work from any hotel room, any coffee shop, anywhere. So that really drove the whole idea that I would go self-employed. So I'm based at home and literally, like everybody else, haven't really left the house in the last 4 months to go to the supermarket. But you're right, you know, you can be so much more productive when you haven't got all of these other things. You know, if I go to a client premises, it could be up to an hour's drive in each direction.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
actually, I'm saving all of this time by not going. We can just do this over Zoom or whatever it needs to be. You can get these things done so much more quicker, so much more easier, without the added stress of I've got to get in a car. I know I'm going to get stuck in traffic if I go that way.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's I think definitely flexible working, home working is a way forward for the working population. I don't know what the stats are. I kind of anticipated about 75% of the workforce in the UK when we went into lockdown were still working because we were able to flip to working from home.
Absolutely. Obviously, we speak to businesses every day, and we speak to, you know, kind of candidates every day, and there are still so many people working from home. And even though we could see lots of people were coming onto the market, sadly redundant or on furlough, there were still so many of our customers that were working full steam ahead, not on reduced time. You know, there were some businesses that reduced to 4 days, but they were predominantly working full steam ahead. So there was so many businesses still operating and thriving or surviving, you know, and I think that was part of it, wasn't it? And, you know, I've obviously got 2 or 3 questions here I thought that would be really useful for the audience. So shall we dive into them?
Yeah.
So, and obviously this follows on quite nicely from what we've just been talking about, because it's tied into the pandemic. But what, if any, changes have you seen in perhaps attitudes towards leadership since the pandemic?
To be honest, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I'm seeing people that are saying, you know, nothing's really changed. Like you say, some businesses have been operating as normal, you know, and it has been full steam ahead. But what makes leadership difficult when you're managing remotely is communication. So, you know, I have a Twitter account, you know, and I follow things on Twitter, and some of the things that I've seen from people all across the UK, you know, their manager hasn't spoken to them since they've started working from home, you know, or they get an email, you know, and it's management by email. And I'm not a big advocate of micromanaging, you know, and I've been lucky over my career that I've never been micromanaged. You know, my managers just say, get on with it, you know. So if you're not a self-sufficient person and you need micromanaging, you need to be speaking up and telling your manager that. If they're not managing you in the way that you want to be managed, or if leadership has changed, you know, you need to be very open about how you go about doing these things. But I'm also seeing evidence of leaders that are very much micromanaging still. So it's kind of, you know, it's a double-edged sword. Some people have taken to it really well. Some leaders are just like, yeah, I need this all the time. Are you working 9 to 5? You know, are you putting in the hours? Are you taking your lunch break of 30 minutes? You know, and they're being very, very stringent about the whole thing. Whereas, you know, from a self-employment point of view, you know, I sit down at my desk at 8:30 in the morning. I do a couple of hours, and then I take an hour to do something else. You know, and I've structured my day for it to be flexible. And there's times when I work weekends now as well, which I would never have done when I was in the corporate world. So I think leaders need to open their eyes a bit more. I think some of them are still set in the 1950s and 60s, you know,
I would agree.
Working model of you go to work Monday to Friday. Well, actually, Monday to Friday doesn't exist anymore. You know, we're Monday to Sunday, 52 weeks a year type country now. So why are people insisting that you go to work Monday to Friday, or we go into the office Monday to Friday?
I agree.
It doesn't make any sense to me anymore. The technology's there. People's creativity comes at different times of the day. I've been known to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and start invoicing for my business, you know, catching up on stuff because I'm awake, you know. So why not tap into those people that are creative at those times of the day?
Yeah, I don't think there needs to. I've always championed it, to be fair, perhaps more so since my little boy arrived, you know, 9 years ago, is that, especially my job, you know, recruitment, it doesn't need to be 9 till 5. A lot of what we do is done in the evening anyway, because people can't always chat to us in the working day. A big thing, it's interesting that you said, obviously, you saw a lot of people weren't being spoken to, the communication, and we've seen a real, I'd probably say, so many different versions of it. Businesses not talking to staff, whether they were working or on furlough, and then too much, where they're literally, you know, have you logged on yet? You know, what are you doing now? Can you send me a report of what you've done in the last two hours? And it's just painful. I think we need there's an element there of, you know, business are lacking trust if they just need to see everybody working minute by minute in an office environment. I also get, though, that some people aren't motivated, like you said, and perhaps need that check-in with their leader or their manager or their director. But really, does it need to be 9 till 5? The pandemic should teach us something, that we've had to work around families, elderly relatives that have needed support, you know, and people can't. I didn't do a 9 till 5, you know, and neither did my husband during the whole of lockdown, because we had a little boy that we were homeschooling. We couldn't do 9 till 5. We had to give some time to him. So our days very much were early mornings, you know, and playing catch up at night. But that was okay, because we were trying to survive as a family, as well as, you know, run a business and uphold a job. Businesses do need to wake up. I think it sounds quite brutal, but it's true. Wake up to the time that we're in right now.
Yeah, and I think this goes back probably about 22 years, when we first started paying for maternity leave. You know, ladies would start to have statutory maternity pay like 20 years ago. And actually what we did then was to start encouraging women to come back into the workplace after they've had children.
Yeah.
We created a 2-income household. So by, you know, going into lockdown and having 2 people at home that need to work full time, because that's what's happened over the last 20 years, we've got to start learning how to juggle. What I was hoping for was that, you know, businesses would see that they could be productive without working 9 till 5, Monday to Friday. You know, does everybody need to work a 5-day week? I mean, I worked for an employer that was chemicals manufacturing, and every job they advertised was Monday to Friday office hours, you know, unless it was shift operations, which was shift work. But they were absolutely adamant that every job had to be full-time Monday to Friday. And I'm just sitting there thinking, you know, you're missing out on so many great people.
So much talent that are part-time. I agree with you. Yeah.
And they did switch eventually. I am aware that a number of people that joined them full-time went on to have children and then requested flexible working have dropped to 4 days a week or 3 days a week or whatever it is. So they are dragging themselves into the 21st century, which is great.
But I only think they do that with people. I think they only do that with people that request it. It's not always available. And I know we discussed this last week, and it kind of brings us on to the next question, really. What do we need to be doing differently when we're hiring talent? And I think you then mentioning part-time, that's a great option. No, but not everybody needs to be full-time.
No.
Working 9 till 5, Monday to Friday. There's so much talent on the market that's part-time that I think is lost in translation, because businesses just won't see their roles as anything other than full-time.
I think what a lot of businesses do is they spend time racking up all of this additional working hours until it becomes a full-time role, and they go, right, we need to recruit a full-time person, instead of thinking, actually, I need somebody for just 2.5 days a week. So I'll go out and recruit somebody for 2.5 days a week. They're not thinking, switching on to that just yet, which is a real shame, because they're missing out on such a great labour market. But then if they've got somebody on 2.5 days a week, and then they realise they need another 2.5 days a week, what's stopping them from hiring another great person to do that other 2.5 days? And then they've got 5 days a week.
Exactly.
You know, and then back to where you were, yes, you've got 2 people, but it's still only 1 person on the head count. So it swings and roundabouts. And I think it is a bit of attitude. Are people just conditioned to employ people full time? And I keep looking at the job boards, even though I'm not particularly recruiting, I'm not recruiting for anybody at the moment. A lot of what I can see is full-time work. All the time, all the time. You know, you go in the job boards and you click, right, I just want to see what's going on part-time or contract. And there's still jobs that are full-time hours, you know, and they claim to be part-time. And I'm yet to find in the local area more than one HR job that is actually offering flexible working up front. Their job advert says, ideally full-time, but for the right candidate, we will take a flexible working option. Brilliant. One employer.
And you're so right. You know, part of what we do, and I've championed it for so many years now, is every brief that we end up taking on with a business, we always challenge it. Does this need to be full-time? Would you consider someone part-time? Because we have a really superb bank of candidates that are wanting part-time work, and we struggle to support them because businesses only want full-time. And what is the flexible working policy like? And I have to say, there are still so many businesses that do they really offer it? Not always. And when they then ask, what does flexible working look like to this individual, I'll perhaps give an example. No, that's part-time. Actually, no, it's not. It isn't part-time. It's this individual requiring flexible working around family commitments or lifestyle. And lifestyle is the biggest stumbling point, I have to say, is that businesses are more accepting of family commitments, but not if someone just chooses the lifestyle to be part-time. Well, why do they need part-time? They haven't got any family. Well, actually, that's how he or she chooses to run their working week. They like a 3 or 4 day weekend. Who wouldn't? If it's possible, if you can manage it, then, gosh, I think lockdown just teaches a few things, and one of them is the true reality of flexible working, which should include part-time workers too.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. And I look at the jobs that are available part-time, and it's all hospitality, it's all retail, it's all the lower end of the job market. And I sit there and think, there's so many talented people out there that can't commit to a full-time working week because of caring commitments, children, whatever it might be. And they're missing out on this massive talent pool of people for the really good jobs, and these people are being forced into being far too qualified and taking on a sales assistant role in a retail shop, and that is not a good utilisation of the great people that we've created over the last 20 years in the UK, and it's such a shame that businesses aren't switched on even now. I've been in HR for 16 years, and this is a drum that's been banged for since Labour were in government, 16 years ago. I just sit there and think, how have we not moved yet? How have we not transitioned? We've got to find a way forward with it.
I agree, and what we're seeing is the trend that's coming through now is that historically it would always be females that requested part-time work. That generally it is. It's females, it's working parents, or it's someone who's perhaps caring for an elderly relative. But now, since lockdown, we're actually seeing that transition into the male market, where they've been able to spend time at home with their family during lockdown. They've worked flexibly around family, and they want it moving back into the job market. And I just hope that we see some balance coming. I really do. I hope we see that balance of it being, it isn't frowned upon that male or female people are asking for flexible working. And every candidate at the moment that we speak to for a role, they want to know if they are operating a flexible working policy for work from home. Do I need to be in the office 5 days a week? But there's still a massive number of businesses that do. They want people back in the offices now, and it's 100%. And the ones that perhaps aren't just yet ready to recruit, it's because they've done really well in the pandemic, and they're not quite in the need for bringing in new people that can work from home. There's so much to take away from the pandemic. I just hope that businesses actually step up.
Yeah, me too. And it's pleasing to hear that men are actually wanting to consider flexible working options. I mean, when my son was born, my husband quit his full-time job. There was no point him working full-time and me going part-time, because I was the main breadwinner. What was the point in us living on 10 grand a year less? Of course. For me to go part-time. He quit his job, and he had the most amazing 3.5 years at home with his son. What an amazing bond. He worked part-time. Degree educated guy, was cleaning toilets at the Royal Stoke Hospital, but he did it. He did it, and he absolutely, it meant that he worked 20 hours a week. He was earning money. We could still go on holiday, all of those great things. But it was a shame because it wasn't utilising all of my husband's abilities, his skills, his
of course,
and eventually he went back to full-time work because he missed it that much, but he wasn't earning. He wasn't earning as much as he would have been if he was still working part-time, which I found amazing.
It is. It's incredible, isn't it? And I think it's great that he did take that break, and he actually thought, this is going to work for us as a family, because obviously now with the maternity changes and that you can split your maternity leave, I think that's switched that market up a lot. If you women and men can actually share the paternity and maternity leave, I think it's brilliant. It was a great move. I still don't know of many people that actually utilise the scheme though, if I'm honest. And Yeah, I think that's an education piece as well around sometimes your HR function, or if there isn't one, the owners of the business aren't perhaps championing it and
Yeah,
giving it as an option. I don't think that
yeah.
happens enough.
And a lot of it,
Sometimes.
it's statutory pay for a lot of the time, unless your employer is willing to
Yeah.
enhance pay. I mean, I was lucky, I got enhanced maternity pay when I was employed. But and they then went on, with the shared parental leave to say, right, we'll enhance the shared parental leave as well, because they didn't want to not do that. But there's employers out there that wouldn't do that. So it becomes a cost issue. Can you drop to £40 a week when you're used to £400 or £500 a week in your wages? A lot of people can't do that. So
No.
I think if businesses want the top talent and want the great people, they need to invest in the compensation and benefits side of it, the reward package, the enhanced maternity, the enhanced paternity, shared parental leave at the same levels of pay, and then people will come back to work. The probation service was a big one for that. They would pay maternity leave to female probation officers for a full 12 months. They would have their salary for a full 12 months, not maternity leave. Because probation officers were so few and far between in female probation officers, they needed them to come back to work. They couldn't afford to just lose them, from £100 a week maternity pay. So they pay them full pay and bring them back.
I think it's incredible that that they did that. But then I also, in terms of like the benefits packages, putting aside, say, maternity and paternity pay, businesses really need to step up on those as well, because that's what we're being challenged a lot at the moment with candidates. What are the benefits packages? What will they offer me to come? And it's a very much, sometimes it can be more about the benefits than the salary when when individuals are moving jobs between businesses, and I get that. I had a business the other day that wanted to make an offer to a candidate that was currently on 25 days holiday, but they were offering 20, and I don't blame the candidate for saying no, because especially if you're a working parent, you can't afford to lose 5 days holiday when you already struggle with the 76 days and the summer holiday that we have to cover with childcare. It's challenging. If we move on then to the next stage, because I think you and I could actually talk about that topic for a long time. That's a separate the video, that is. So the final question I've got for you then was really about what you believe the key areas, so recommendations that you would put out there really that businesses should focus on as we come out of the pandemic to support our people, because it is all about our people, isn't it, and helping them and bringing them forward with us because we want to retain them. So what can businesses do?
I think from a business point of view, communication is the key now to everything. We've got all of this technology, we can communicate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it is there, but it's actually the quality of communication. It's not just talking at your employees, it's talking to, it's getting feedback, it's including them in what's going to happen next, and these are all the things that I would be saying to my clients. What is your plan for the future? If you lose your top guy that does this, who are you going to replace him with? You need to be looking around all your employees and talking to them, finding out who's got the skills. You'll have a fair idea just by looking, but actually if you start talking to people, you might find out that they've got skills that you didn't know about. So it needs to be, it's communication is the key. That's the first thing they need to do, and then start planning, not just recruitment strategy, not just about business strategy. Start planning everything, even plan for another pandemic, because we were all on the back foot into lockdown. Nobody had even thought about this. I mean, I've done business continuity planning, I've done emergency preparedness stuff in the past, and even I wasn't prepared for what would happen. We had to go into a full lockdown and nobody could go anywhere. It is all about the planning. Even if it is business as usual right now for your business, you can't sit back and say, actually, we're just back to where we were 4 months ago, everything's fine.
No, we can't.
Not fine. You don't know who in your business is actually sitting there thinking, this isn't where I want to be anymore. This isn't the business I want to work for anymore. I want to go off and do this. And he could be or she could be the top guy. All the brains, everything, the go-to person in your business. If they walk away, what have you lost? And this is when I talk to particularly manufacturing and engineering type businesses, because you've got a lot of people with 25 years service or more, so much knowledge invested in business, and then you just let them walk out the door and they retire or they leave. You just and then you're on the back foot. So communication and planning all across the business. It's where every business needs to be right now. You know, you can't just sit back and pretend that the last 4 months haven't happened. You know, you've got to plan for the future.
I think you're right, we've got to plan for the future, but also plan in case an event like this happens again, or a version of it, you know, something that really does have a huge impact on business and life, because I think that was what was so challenging about what we've just been through, wasn't it? Is that it didn't just affect business, it was people's lives as well. Everything changed, wasn't it? Well, I think that we've come to a lovely end there. So thank you so much. I feel that we could rabbit on and have far many more discussions over topics, especially recruitment. Yeah, I feel like we can discuss that for days. So thank you for joining me today. It's been lovely having you on, and I'm really pleased that you did decide to join me. I'm sure it's added some value to the network. So yes, thank you. And that's the end of this week's video interview with Liz Halls. If you'd like to have a look at Liz's business or pop over to her LinkedIn, I will include the bios on the description of the video. So once again, thank you.
Thanks, Gary Ann. It's been great. Thank you.